The whole point of a cold open is you start with me going something like, my head hurts, or you go, oh, somebody's being shot, or you go, I'm Craig Ferguson on the television and I'm standing 3 inches from the camera making a face and laughing. The fella who was on after David Letterman used to have this fella dressed as a robot doing some nonsense. I thought I took away from the Craig Ferguson comedy, of which I am a fan. I like Craig Ferguson's comedy. What I don't like is that nonsense, a drivel, some sort of robot puppet, not the kind that you get inside of, like Big Bird. And not the kind that you put your hand into, because it's more of a mechanical thing. And there was just a robot's head and torso sitting on the table at the side of the stage with flashing lights and making smart-ass comments. No, I didn't like it. I used to watch the cold open on that show, and for the first several years, the cold opens, it was Craig Ferguson coming up to the camera and he'd just start saying stuff. The audience would be laughing like he'd just turned up and out of the middle of nowhere and started talking and they didn't know what was going on. Oh, it used to be hilarious. But no, then they started making him do this gimmick with a robot. Or they'd have other members of the audience or guests from there standing behind him. No, just do the proper cold open without any of the extra nonsense. You don't need gimmicks. You're an extremely talented and experienced former alcoholic emigrant from Scotland. He used to play the boss on that sitcom, something, Cleveland Rocks. The Drew Carey show, that's what it was. He played an English boss on that. He put on an English accent and pretended not to be Scottish. I suppose that's how acting works. And then he got that show that came on after David Letterman for 10 years. Then he retired and he put on that other English fella. I just said, oh, this English fella was very successful. We're going to get this other English fella. Well, for one thing, Craig Ferguson wasn't English. He was Scottish and still, although no, he's not still Scottish. He's an American citizen now. So he's whatever he wants to be. That's the great thing about you Americans. You say, you can come over here. It's the American dream. You can come over here, practice your cold open for 5 years, and then eventually we'll get you in a proper budget and you'll be able to have half a robot sitting on the table with flashing lights making smart comments at you. And that'll save you having to come up with something new all the time, even though you're perfectly capable of doing so. But we feel obliged to furnish you with gimmicks. Craig Ferguson should have said, no, I don't want any gimmicks. Get that thing off from my stage. I just want the camera here. And I'll stand here and I'll say stuff because that's what I do. I'm very good at it. That's what he should have said. Should have said, I'm very good at it. He's a podcaster now, incidentally. Anyway, that's the end of the cold open, but not quite, as you'll find out later in the show. Lot to get on with today. Items that need to be attended to, issues that need to be addressed, topics. Oh, topics. We've got lots and lots of topics. We're positively booming to the seams with topics. We've got topics coming out of this elastic band. I used to call these rubber band. Bollocks, I broke it. Well, let's see another one. No, I suppose I can still have topics coming over it even when it's broken. Although I can't examine it anymore because it's gone flying over to the other side of the room and I'll never find it. It was a particularly interesting elastic band though. There was more than one. There was a single elastic band with another one attached to it that seemed to have been tied in knots and may also have been partially broken. I say partially broken. When you break a rubber band, what happens is it has a clean break. There's no such thing as a semi-fracture on an elastic band. It has a clean break, but if you have a situation whereby you've already tied knots in part of it, you can still have closed loops that are not affected by the clean break. It's very rarely that you'll have a fracture going along the middle of an elastic band rather than across. That follows the line of the band up and down along the centre of the band, like the centre of a road. No, they usually break across the way. Presumably that's something to do with where the torque is and everything. Oh, that's interesting. I just got an email. Oh, it's an email to say that the previous segment that I recorded, the two cats walk into a bar story, has been processed and is available for me on Google Drive for further manual processing. That's step one of this already done, and I haven't even started the program yet. I've only just gone, you join me at a tremendously exciting moment, and yet I've got a later segment already half processed. Isn't that great? This is how I like to do it. I like to start knowing I've already done some of it. That's the best thing to do with any kind of a job or a pastime like that. I presume other pastimes are similar to this if you're doing them properly. If you enjoy a round of golf, you go up to one of the later greens first. It's quite easy to access the last 3 or 4 greens because they'll be near the clubhouse. They'll be near the starting point. I presume the track goes round in a loop. So if you're starting at the first green, you might as well go and have a look at the 17th and 18th first. Maybe play those and get a start on those. And then go back to the first hole. I presume they get progressively more difficult as you progress through from hole 1 to hole 9. Or is there 18 holes you have on a golf course? I think it is, I'm not sure. This isn't interesting at all, I know. Oh, the rubber bands, that's where I was. I was on the rubber bands. Anyway, I was trying to say, you join me at a tremendously exciting moment, etc., etc. Top is coming out of this elastic band. Well, it was in my hand at the time and I was playing with it. If you have an elastic band in your hand and you're able to not play with it, then there's something wrong with you. You may not be alive at all, because that's just not normal. That's weird. That's like the thing they accuse the American president of sometimes lately. They say sometimes he seems to just freeze. Now, if you could put an elastic band in his hand and he still froze while he was doing that, then that would be a time to become concerned about his mental health. But if he doesn't have an elastic band to distract him and he's just freezing, no, that just means he's bored to death of the stupid fucking shit that the president of the United States of America has to deal with. He goes around with all this shit. He has to deal with all this starting wars or stopping wars or whatever he does. I don't know much about geopolitics. I presume to either start wars or stop wars or try not to interfere with them or try to interfere with them or try not to have wars that look like they're interfering in or try to have wars that they don't like. There's probably Americans listening to this now, new listeners who think, oh Christ, he's going off about something about us having wars. Don't worry, I haven't a fucking clue what goes on in the news. I have no idea. This is just a nonsense podcast. It's absolute pure drivel. I started this segment talking about an elastic band and instantly broke it and it flew over there. A cat will probably find it later. When I let the cats back into this room after I'm done, I'll find one playing with it in due course. I've got 2 kittens at the moment. They'll probably find it and play with it. If you gave your man Joe, what's his name, an elastic band and he still froze up, that's the test you do. Although now, wait a minute. A rubber band is something you play with absent-mindedly. So if your mind is absent, then you'd still be playing with it. So it's really not much of a test at all. I take that back. If you can do something absent-mindedly, that's not a test of whether your mind is functioning. It is not. You can still be absent-minded, and there's good absent-minded and bad absent-minded. If you're sitting burning in hell and you're able to be absent-minded about it and not think about the pain and the torture and the hopelessness, that's a good absent-minded. You want that. Especially if everyone's judging you. Every time you stop and stare into space, someone goes, oh, there's something wrong with him. Look at that. There's something wrong with him. He's able to go 5 seconds without doing anything. That's not a normal teenager at all, that president. He's not a normal teenager. He's able to freeze and just not do anything for several seconds. That's fucking ridiculous. He grew up in the... Oh, maybe he didn't grow up in the MTV generation. He is quite old, I understand. I understand he's quite old. I do understand that. I understand how age works. I understand the fact that he's been around for some time means he's quite old. I do know that. I'm able to discern that in my brain. At least that much. But where you get to the whole geopolitics and who's invading who and the Middle East and the economic situation in Outer Mongolia and what's going on with the left and the right and the in-between and the whole, the stuff that goes on in America and all the other places. and Kim Jong-un, and your man in Russia. He's quite old too, I understand. Does he stop and stare into space? I don't know. It's hard to tell. He speaks a foreign language. I have to presume he speaks foreign gestures as well. So if you see him stopping motionless for a couple of seconds, it may not mean the same thing as an English speaker stopping and going motionless for a couple of seconds. We've no idea what it's like to think in Russian. At least I don't. Have you any idea what it's like to think in Russian? You probably don't. Unless you're Russian, I suppose. According to the stats, there's a couple of people downloading this in Russia. It says on my stat, the Russian Federation, like it's a Star Trek thing. The Russians have a federation. Is that good or bad? I don't know. The Americans probably have a federation too, do you? You love to go on about the feds. In fact, so much so, 16-year-olds on TikTok in Ireland sometimes refer to the police as the feds. There's nobody more than 16 reading their crap, so nobody takes them up and tells them, excuse me, there's no such thing as feds here. We're not part of a federal state. Of course, if he said that, someone would say, what about Europe? What about the EU? Is that not a federation? And then you'd say, I've no idea. I told you I don't know anything about geopolitics. I don't know anything about anything, nor do I want to. That's not to say I refuse to try to learn about it. I'm just saying I don't want to. I don't want to flush the toilet and brush the shit off the toilet bowl either, but I still do. So don't assume that because I don't want to know, I don't try to. I do. I try my best. I go on Twitter and it says someone on the right is doing something bad and someone on the left is doing something else bad. I don't understand half of it. Although I still find myself commenting on stuff a lot lately. You just feel like it. Why should I have to wait till I know about stuff to comment on it? Nobody else does. I don't see why anyone else should have to wait. So, is this making me sound ignorant? I hope not. I'd be rather annoyed at myself for that, for making myself sound ignorant. That's a disloyal thing to do to yourself. I suppose actors have to do that all the time, though. There's people who are actors who have to go around pretending to shoot people. And they say, oh Christ, I don't want people to think I'm a murderer. I don't want people to think that I'm a murderer. I don't want to come home to my family after a long day at the office set in a warehouse somewhere on a soundstage, wherever that is. They'll say, oh, how was your day at the office? And I'll have to say, oh, well, it's not a real office. It has desks. It has walls around the perimeter at least. And it has cubicles and dividers and computers. What's the difference? Is it that nobody's doing any work there? No, people are working. It's a working TV production set. There's always people working. And I tell you, they're probably doing a lot more work than the people who are playing with the photocopiers in the real office. Anyway, this actor, he'll come home every day. He'll say, what did you do at your job today? Your job that you love, regardless of whether or not it's a steady income or anything. You've sacrificed a lot for it. So how was your day at the office? And you have to say, oh, I had to shoot someone. I had to pretend to be a terrorist and then I had to shoot someone in the head. Now, it wasn't real. There was fake rubber bullets. In fact, there were no bullets at all. They just had some fella make a noise. I'm not allowed to make the noise myself. Someone else has to make the noise of the gun for me. It's like working on the Muppet Show where you're only allowed to operate one of your hands and someone else does the voice and someone else operates the other hand. And then Elbow is over there going, what in the name of Christ is going on here? Why do I feel different than I did 10 years ago? It's like I'm a different person. It's like that. At least the puppeteers can go home and say, oh, that was nothing to do with me. That was the other fella did that. He moved the hand wrong. But no, if you're an actor, people say, oh, that gun you fired, that noise didn't sound realistic at all. You're a terrible actor. Of course, you can't just say, oh, that's not me. Someone else makes the noise. Then you sound ridiculous. You sound ridiculous in front of your peers as well. Because that's the other thing. Every year you worry for months what your peers are going to think about you. Because they're the ones who decide whether to nominate you and put you on some awards thing every year. So it's all about your peers. It's all about peer review. And then you have to worry about your peers in terms of the people you live with. Are they peers? I don't know. They're fellow humans and they're living in the same household as you. I suppose your spouse is one of your peers. Are your children your peers? Hopefully they're not. Hopefully you're discouraging them from joining your industry since you're clearly so unhappy with it, so dissatisfied. I hope you tell them to get a proper job in a proper office.
Into your head.
Now I know what you're thinking there. You're probably thinking a cold open shouldn't start like that. You don't start and say this is a cold open. Well, I do realise that, but I'm trying to do some sort of a hybrid. Because for many months there, I was experimenting with preludes and interludes and afterludes on this podcast. And often I would start by going, this is a prelude to today's episode of Into Your Head podcast. Hello. And then I'd say some stuff. But I noticed the last 2 or 3 episodes I did it with a proper TV style cold open, just like you do on crime scene investigation or something. Last week, the first words that you heard from me were, there's a wasp in here. I didn't say hello or anything. I didn't even say this is a prelude or this is a cold open. I just went, there's a wasp in here. Now, that wasn't one of the better episodes, but the 2 episodes preceding that, well, the second of those 2 episodes preceding that had a similar style cold open that I thought turned out quite well. Although, I suppose it was somewhat of a prelude, because it started with me saying something like, I don't think this is going to work out, or something like that. And I was talking about the prelude or the cold open or wherever it is. I think I've learned something from those past 2 weeks, and I think I'm going to move to cold opens. Like this one, except I won't be going on about how it's a cold open. I'll only go on about how it's a cold open if I'm doing that's how I do. If I want to go on about the fact that it's a cold open and do that sort of thing, then I'll warn you by saying this is a cold open. How about I do this? I'll say this is a note about the format of today's. Oh no, that won't work. I don't know. Maybe I'll just do whatever springs to mind on the day. I do a lot of overthinking on this podcast. I've been in here in this room nearly an hour now. I've done half an hour of talking and recording, and then half an hour in 2 15-minute increments of not talking and watching the segment slowly upload to where it goes to be processed. The internet is going extra slow today, so I had a lot of time to sit and stare and watch. I suppose I could have just left it till later and got on with it. But no, I like my time between segments where I sit here and stare at the thing uploading and take a sip from... I always seem to have the dregs of a bottle of Coca-Cola available just in time for the recording session. There's like an inch or 2 left in the bottle. So I bring that in here. And the advantage to that is if we don't bring in the dregs of a bottle in here, or the dregs of 2 bottles if they're available, you finish them off, and instead of having to fish out a glass when you're finished and bring it out to the dishwasher or some crap like that, I just pick up the 2 empty bottles and bring them straight to the empty bottle receptacle, and then go back to my desk in the sitting room where I edit this crap. It's absolutely fantastic new system. I'm streamlining my workflow here. That's what I'm doing. I've cut out the bringing in glasses and pouring myself a glass, not least because I knocked them over. And I'm cutting out the whole... I'm cutting out lots of stuff here. So maybe I'll cut out the going, this is a cold open, or going, this is not a cold... Maybe when it's not a cold open, I'll let myself do that. I'll say, if it's not a cold open, if it's not a true cold open, or I don't consider it to be a true cold open, and it's more of a prelude, then I'll allow myself to start by going, this is not a cold open, because that would be appropriate. Although now that you mention it, I won't really know that it's not a cold open until I get going, because I don't plan these things. I won't know. When I start a segment, if I start by going, this is not a cold open, what if it turns out to be a cold open? If I start every segment here not knowing what it's going to turn out to be, it could be anything. If I say this is a cold open, there's a good chance it won't be a cold open. And if I say this is not a cold open, there's a good chance it'll turn into a 10-minute tirade about whether or not I should say this is a cold open or this is not a cold open. I suppose I could say this is a cold open and then say this is not a cold open, delete as appropriate. But that too sounds far too contrived for me. Trying to do this on the fly, it needs to be natural. It can't be just me just going, I'll pick from this menu. Will I leave in the bit where I say this is a cold open or this is not a cold open? That's like, you might as well just fill up the whole show with theme tunes and pre-recorded announcements. You might as well do that if you're going to do that. This isn't Classic Hits 24 FM where we play jingles all day and we go, oh, it's the classic 9 at 9. We're going to have a cold open from the 1980s. There's probably loads of songs that have openings that could be called a cold open, where they just start singing and then the music comes in later. No, I couldn't do that because I'm not a singer and I can't sing, and this isn't a singing thing. But no, I'm just saying I could do the equivalent of that's an option. Oh, no, it's not an option because I'm doing a tirade against these radio stations who do that. No, why would I make that an option? The point is that's not an option. It's an option, but not one I'm going to do. I reject it as an option. That's what I mean. We're not going to do the classic 9 at 9 and have loads of fucking pre-recorded, preset things. Well, except, of course, the two cats walk into a bar story that's all in practically every episode. In fact, I've already recorded this week's one. And then there's the once upon a time there was a dog. A dog. There's that as well. And then, of course, there's the thing where I often start where he joined me at a tremendously exciting moment, etc., etc. In fact, now that I think of it, almost every segment on this program has a set opening. So it's not like I plan it like that. No, those are just tools that I use to get going. I'm not going, oh, play a jingle, it's time for the two cats walk into a bar dog story. Where's my jingle thing here? It's the two cats walk into a bar story. Oh, that sounds fucking ridiculous. Do you want me to do that? No, I won't. I won't do that. I won't do that. That's where I get in the song thing now. I won't do that. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. I won't do that. That's a load of bollocks. And also about the third time Meatloaf has come up on this podcast lately. I don't even like him. Not that I have anything against him. I don't wish death on him or anything. Maybe he rest in peace. But no, I need to stop bringing up Meatloaf every 5 minutes. He's not my target audience, him or his surviving relatives. They're not my target audience, so they'll be most welcome to listen if they want. We don't exclude people here. We don't come in and say, oh, my demographic is people between the age of 37 and 52, mostly middle-aged men from America. Although that happens to be most of my listeners. But no, there's no demographic here. There'll be none of that crap on this podcast. We'll put a thing out that anyone can listen to and anyone cannot listen to. That's what we'll do. So now, where was I? Oh, yes, it was the cold open thing. Did I start with this is a cold open? I think I did. So that means the cold open stroke prelude thing is now nearly 10 minutes long. That's a bit much. I don't like that because it means 10 minutes into the show, I'll be playing the opening tune and then I'll be going, you join me at a tremendously exciting moment. That's a bit much. We'll make it work somehow. That's what we'll do. We'll make it work somehow by stopping this segment and not continuing to go, we'll make it work somehow. Maybe we'll do that. Will we? Will we do that? We probably will. Have you noticed lately you can hear my lips smacking against each other as I speak? It's not that I'm doing it particularly. I realise I've always done that. You just couldn't hear it. That's because of an improvement in the sound production on this program. It's actually an improvement. Now, I don't actually like that part of the improvement. I don't like listening to my lips smacking against each other. But that is an improvement because it's removed all the other noises that would normally drown that out. So it's a good thing. I heard a podcast expert who does a program and he does that and you can hear his lips smacking and he thinks it's the greatest thing since sliced. Anyway, will I do a prelude after this? No, I won't. That would erode the situation further. Maybe I'll put this in after the opening segment. That's what I'll do. I'll make a new cold open now that I'll use as the cold open, and then I'll stick this segment in later it'll just be a segment about cold opens and my failure to produce a suitable one herein, as you've just heard. That's what we do. So I'll stop this now and then I'll make a new cold open, which you'll have already heard if you're listening to this. So I don't need to explain that further. cats walk into a bar. One of the cats goes straight up to the bar counter and says, "Hello, can I have a pint of your finest Guinness, please?" And the man behind the bar says, "Can we skip the formalities? We did a very long two cats walk into a bar story on the previous episode. It went on and on and on and on. It was like half the episode. I think people are sick to death of hearing the whole formalities of you ordering the pint of your finest Guinness and me going, 'Certainly, sir, a pint of your finest Guinness coming right up,' and you going, 'Oh, that's great. That's great. It's a score. I got my pint of Guinness,' or whatever your sarcastic quip is this week. People don't want to hear that whole setup over and over again every week. It's as bad as the once upon a time there was a dog. A dog. A dog. Basically a dog. Because he does that and then now he spends an extra minute explaining for new listeners that he likes to start a segment sometimes and once upon a time there was a dog. And explains this, that's just a way of getting going and seeing where it leads. And that it's probably not going to be about a dog. And they're sick to death of that. And they're probably sick to death of our setup here as well. And the cat says that, why in the name of Christ did you replace our traditional 40-second setup with that whole 3-minute tirade? That fucking tirade. And the barman says, "Excuse me, it wasn't 3 minutes. The timer is still only up to 1 minute and 53 seconds, including your reply, by the way. And I think it would be worth it to spend 2 minutes on this, coming up with a plan for future episodes where we don't start every day with him going, 2 cats walk into a bar. One of the cats goes straight up to the bar counter and says, etc., etc. We need a way to skip all that." And the cat says, "Excuse me, this isn't a fucking Netflix series. You don't get to skip the opening. You don't get to go skip intro. Absolutely not. No way. Fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. We're not having that. This is a long form podcast. And I'm an imaginary cat and you're an imaginary barman. And these 10 or 15 minutes every now and then are the only times when we get to even exist. If you can call this existence, you can, but it's not existence. We all know that. We don't exist except in an imagination. And you want to curtail that. You want to make it as short as possible. Absolutely not. No. No way." And the barman says, "So, because we only have a limited amount of existence in an imagination for a few minutes every week, you want to not curtail that by wasting a couple of minutes of your short existence setting it up every week. Is that what you're saying?" And the cat says, "Well, that's an interesting way of putting it, I suppose. You're just saying this because last week's episode wasn't one of the better ones, and our appearance in it took up about half the episode and wasn't one of our better ones. Although I would argue that it was." And the barman says, "I would argue that it was too. It was a bit unwieldy though. And the episode itself, actually now that you mentioned it, it wasn't terrible. It's just that the 2 episodes prior to the previous episode were particularly good. So it came as rather a disappointment to have the previous one. But you can't win them all. You can't win them all. Just like ABBA says. ABBA does that song. You can't win them all. The winner takes it all. You can't win it all. Winner takes it all." And the cat says, "I don't think they say you can't win it all in that. I think it's all just the winner takes it all, the loser standing tall." And the barman says, "Don't quote the exact lyric. We'll have YouTube or something coming down with like a ton of bricks, because this thing is on YouTube now." And the cat says, "Is it? Oh, that's fascinating. It's on YouTube now, is it? And how does that work exactly?" And the barman says, "Well, it automatically imports the podcast and then it puts up a picture, whatever picture it can find associated with the podcast. And then you sit and watch that for half an hour and listen to the program. Or else you win the lotto and you get YouTube music because you're too stupid to realize you can listen to the podcasts free on that. You don't need a subscription." And the cat says, "What in the name of Christ is this? What is this?" And the barman says, "It's a traditional 2 cats walk into a bar story. They've been running since the early 2000s. And the cat says, "Have they now? Have they now indeed? Have they indeed?" I don't think we were on the early ones though, were we? And the barman says, funny you should mention it. The early two cats walk into a bar story were in written form. He'd come along in a laptop and he'd type two cats walk into a bar. Except he wouldn't pronounce it like that in those days. He didn't pronounce it at all in those days. He just typed it. I don't think in the early days we got into the just being one cat involved in the story and the other one just disappears off. Because you do that all the time. You come in with your two cats walk into a bar story and then you go up to the bar counter, but we never hear about the other cat at all. Why do we never hear about the other cat who you come in with? What's that about? In fucking years now since the other cat has been involved in any of these stories at all. Did you have a falling out or something? And if so, why are you still attending a pub together? And the cat says, well, maybe, just maybe, there's a rough neighbourhood and despite not being particularly good friends, we do each other a favour and accompany each other through a rough neighbourhood to get to your bar. And then the other cat meets up with his friends at the other end of the bar. And I sit at the bar here like a proper drinker and talk to you, the barman. Right? Maybe that's what it is. And the barman says, no, I don't think that's the case, no. And the cat says, well, it could be. This is an imaginary story. It can be whatever we want. Remember that. And the barman says, oh, so you're saying you'd want it to be like that? You'd want it to be that the other cat pretty much hates you, but just does his duty of accompanying you through this neighbourhood, which you allege is a rough neighbourhood, and then he come in here and our ways here. And the cat says, I didn't say he was helping me. I was saying we were helping each other. And I was just saying that to be diplomatic. It's mostly me helping him. If the other cat came through this neighbourhood on his own, he'd be clawed to death within 2 minutes of getting off the bus. And that's a worry because the bus is approximately 2 minutes walk from here, but it depends on how fast of a walker you are. So if you can get here in less than 2 minutes, you have a good survival rate. But if you can get here, although that's not true, because if you can get here within 2 minutes or less, but you choose not to, you go slow, then you've no better a survival rate. Although I suppose you could start running then if you found out you had to. I suppose. Maybe I'm thinking about that all wrong, I don't know. And the barman says, and just once, can we have the other cat come up to the bar with you? And the cat says, what for? So he can help me place my order and carry the drinks down to the table. You have waiters for that, don't you, if that was needed? And I want to sit at the bar anyway, like a proper cat. And what kind of a cat do you know who would go into a bar and have his friend come up with him to the bar and then they bring their drinks down? That's the worst way to order a Guinness in the bar. To go up to the counter and order it and then wait for it. It takes about half an hour. And you can't sit down. No, it's far better to either sit here at the bar or else go down to your table and wait for someone to bring it. And the barman says, is that not what the other cat's doing? He's gone down to the table and you're supposed to place the order and then bring it down to him. I always thought that was what was happening. And the cat says, oh, did you now? You always assumed that, did you? Why do you think I always go a pint of your finest Guinness and not 2 pints? And I don't go a pint of your finest Guinness and the Ballygown sparkling water for my friend. No, I never order anything for him. Ever, ever, ever. Although maybe I used to. I can't remember. Maybe we just got out with a habit. I suppose you're right. It's getting a bit formulaic here. I come in here every week. The narrator goes, 2 cats walk into a bar. One of the cats goes straight up to the bar counter and says, hello, can I have a pint of your finest Guinness, please? And then, as usual, the barman says some crap about this is getting a bit formulaic. Except he doesn't usually say that, but he says it this week, which is weird because that's something he's never said before. So that's completely the opposite of being formulaic. Barman, you see what I'm getting at? And the barman says, yes, I see what you're getting at. You're trying to be clever. It doesn't suit you. You're really not good at that, cat. You're good at being sarcastic. Well, you're not good at being clever. You're not good at being clever at all. And the cat says, well, that's good, because I'm not clever. It wouldn't be much help for me to be good at being clever if I'm not clever. That's like being given the gift of being good at swimming when you can't swim. It's of no use whatsoever. And the barman says that doesn't make any sense. And the cat says, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly what I'm talking about. It makes no sense at all in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. No sense at all, whether 'tis nobler in the mind. And the barman says, "Oh, you seem to have slipped into a Shakespeare quote there." And the cat says, "What do you mean?" And the barman says, "Where you're going, it makes no sense at all, no sense at all." But then it went, "Whether 'tis nobler in the mind." I think that's from that Shakespeare play. Doesn't it come after to be or not to be? That is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind. And the cat says, "You're going to get us taken down off YouTube now." That's the script from Romeo and Juliet, the movie. I presume it is anyway. Unless they changed it. Why would they change it? It was written by one of the finest writers in the history of, well, in the history of non-Irish literature. One of the finest Shakespearean where are we going with this? And the barman says, "I don't know. Well, I'm not going anywhere. You're apparently not going anywhere either. Your poor friend down there is probably gasping for a drink, but you're just going to forget about him for the night as usual." And the cat says, "I told you. He's not a normal imaginary talking cat. He's more of an ordinary, non-fictional cat. He comes in here and then he wanders off. This is just part of his roost. He prowls around every night, comes down and... You ever see that program they did on the television a few years ago? They put night vision cameras on some cats' collars to see how far around the perimeter of their neighbourhood they go every night. Well, that's what normal cats do. And my friend there, he's not really come in here for a drink at all. He's coming in here because he feels it's part of the perimeter of his expanding territory of this neighbourhood. And he wants to make sure he comes down here. So he comes down here with me. And then at the end of the night, he meets up with me again here outside here. And I walk him home. "Is that okay with you, barman?" And the barman says, "Now that's the most interesting and original interpretation of this story you've ever told me. And it's all happened because for once he has stopped being formulaic. I think that's excellent. So you're saying your friend there, he's not a humanoid talking cat character. He's a real cat who wanders around and you're accompanying him in here. Maybe you should put him on a leash." And the cat says, "I beg your pardon." And the barman says, "I'm just thinking maybe you should put him on the leash. You're behaving like a humanoid cat who talks and goes to pubs and things. And he's behaving more like an ordinary domestic cat. So maybe if you're going to come down here into the rough neighbourhood, you could put him on the leash." And the cat says, "Have you ever seen someone on the bus bringing their cat on the leash and the person who's bringing the cat is a cat as well? That would just draw attention to us. People would look and they'd say, wait a minute, that's a cat. That's an upright humanoid cat. And that's a so-called normal domestic cat. Except it's not normal because it's on a fucking leash. That's not normal. That's like something the Americans would do." And the barman says, "I don't think so. The Americans don't use public transport." This is a cold closure to today's episode of Into Your Head podcast. Goodbye. But don't go yet because I'm just starting the cold closing now, or the afterlude. I just realised, unlike with the cold open, a cold open and a prelude might be considered to be interchangeable or very similar. But the same is not true of a cold closure and an afterlude, and I'll tell you why. An afterlude, at least on this programme, an afterlude I would expect to come after the closing music. And a cold closure would... Oh no, that's actually a load of bollocks. I've never done an afterlude that came after the closing theme music. That's absolute drivel. In fact, they've always... My afterludes... And now I've just realised I've been doing the afterludes wrong then, because they've been coming at the end of the show, but not at the... They haven't been going, goodbye, that's the end of the show, and then doing an afterlude. No, I've just been doing them as the final segment before the closing theme music fades in or whatever. It's not really an afterlude at all, is it? So no, I've never done an afterlude on this show. That's weird, because I just remember a few weeks ago my saying, oh, we did a lot of afterludes and preludes during the winter months on this show. And I think you'll agree I've been getting good at them, so we stop doing them now and try something else. But no, I realise now all the afterludes I did during the winter months since the comeback of this show last October, I did a lot of afterludes and they weren't afterludes at all. I fucked that up royally. For Christ's sake, I made a complete hames of it, a complete cat's breakfast. And then, of course, I come on here now and I say there's cold closures and there's afterludes, and they're completely different. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say the afterlude comes after the closing music, and the cold closure comes. I don't know what a cold closure is now. I have to think about that. If you had a cold closure on the likes of some cop show, I don't know, what would that be? Would it come after the music? They have them on sketch shows. That's what they have them on a lot. They'll have some sketch show, and then they'll do the closing titles, and then after the closing titles, they have a little sketch. They'll have Stephen Fry from 40 years ago, and Hugh Laurie when he was still able to talk in his normal voice. When he still felt allowed to use his normal English accent, they'd come on after the closing, either standing in the street saying stuff to the camera, doing a fake member of the public thing or something like that. That's the cold closure. Now, what would that be like on a drama show? Someone comes into the cop shop and turns off all the lights, and they show the cleaner emptying all the bins around the office. When did they do that in cop shops? Because a cop shop that's busy enough to have a procedural drama based around it surely isn't going to be closing at 5 in the evening and then have the cleaner coming after everyone's gone and just go around whistling and emptying the bins. No, there's going to be people sitting at those desks all night. All day and all of the night. As a song, what's that song? All day and all of the night. Do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do. All day and all of the night. Well, no, if you're in a cop show like that, surely that's going to happen. Or do they have hot desks? Maybe that's how it works. Because if they have hot desks, I presume if there's a night shift, people won't be occupying every desk. So you go to a hot desk and then the cleaner can go around to whatever desk isn't occupied. But then who cleans the hot desks? Maybe they're cleaned before that. I don't know. Surely to Christ, if you're important enough to be in a cop show, you should have your own desk to yourself and you don't have to share with everyone else. I worked in an office for a number of years. Nearly always had my own desk. The only time when I didn't was when I was new. After that, I nearly always had a desk. They said, there's your desk there. You sit down there and do stuff. I had about 8 months where I didn't have my own computer in my first office job. About 8 months where I didn't have my own computer in my first office. At one point, there was a phone on my desk. And then some fella who was one level up from me realised one day, the cable on his phone thing was gone. So he says, I'm just going to borrow yours because you don't need that. The office junior doesn't use the phone. So he went and took that. So I did all my franking top-up credit calls over the speaker phone from then on. That was fucking ridiculous now that I think about it. I worked my arse off in that job. The very first day, my first day ever working in a proper office job, I licked hundreds of envelopes and got blood on them because nobody told me. You just close the flap. You don't lick it, apparently. Apparently, that's just, it's not confidential or anything. We're sending out invoices to customers and you can just tuck that in. And no one told me that. I just dropped out of accountancy college after about 5 years. Maybe they thought I'd done a module on how to close envelopes. Well, no, I hadn't. There was none of that closing envelopes thing. No, the closest we did was a course on a module called personal development. I didn't turn up for any of the lectures for that, but everyone knew it was a load of bullshit. Anyway, on with the end of the show.